Welcome, February 10th, 2021, to our AQAvit meeting. We'll just hand the reins over to Mesbah to give us an overview of some of the great updates and work that's been done in the system test side to be able to get some time-based system tests going. And we'll talk about why that's needed once we get shifted over. So Mesbah, take it away if you want to talk a bit about that and share whatever you have.
Yeah, thanks, Shelly. So I'm going to hit present and share. Can you guys see?
Yeah, it's coming in.
Okay. Yeah. So hi, everyone.
Hi.
What I would present today is a recent change that has taken place in how we run the SDF-based system test at AQAvit. The basic change is, as some of you would be aware of already, is that we have moved from an iteration-based approach of running the SDF load tests to a time-based one. So we are running load tests for 5 minutes now, as you would see, like these 5-minute stamps showing up in some of these targets. Not all of them, but many of them. The goal is to ensure that we are executing the load tests for an appropriate amount of time. So the iteration-based test were either running for too short a time or too long a time. So although the failures would become less deterministic, the expectation is that we are likely to catch more problems by running the short-running tests for longer.
Right. And in that case, it's like warming the JIT up. And I had even heard that by this change has already found vetted out a new JIT bug on because of this change. So that's really good.
Right. So now, once we do find a bug, then the next question is that was originally raised by Geeta, was that how we reproduce it. So there are a couple of ways we can run these tests that have already been converted to time-based in an iteration-based fashion. So the simplest way is to run them in a grinder. So we have introduced what we're calling a system custom target. So you can go into a grinder and basically run a target called system custom, and in the custom target field, you specify that the class name of the SDF load test that you want to run. So for this particular demo, I just ran the class loading load test, and you just specify dash test equals the name of the SDF class, which you will find in the SDF repo if you look, and then this will run the test in a iteration-based manner. So if we take a look at the console output here, you'll see that the class loading load test, original load test, was run for whatever many iterations that the test was designed to run, without any time restriction on it. So this hopefully will help debug. So that is one. That is basically the simpler way, simpler test, and we can have a more complicated version. So for example, this is the second test that I ran in a grinder for the purpose of the demo. In here, we specify, so we're running a test that actually takes in an argument, which is workload. So this math load test can run different types of workloads. And if you want to run a specific one, you can specify that here. You can also specify the time. So you probably want to run it for 1 minute, whereas the default is to run for 5 minutes. So you can specify these values as well. And also you can specify debug options if you want. This is an already existing feature that we can leverage in order to reproduce a test. So I can quickly show how that ran as well. So that ran for 1 minute, and it passed. But the idea is we should be able to run a failure case using the number of iterations at which it failed in the time-based version of it. So, and also there's a way we can run this test in an iteration-based fashion in the local environment. If you're using the make layer that SDF comes with, that will also allow you to bypass this time-based change completely and run them in iteration-based. So there are multiple ways we can run these tests in in both iteration and time-based fashion, and that should help us debug a test failure.
Great. But, so if one question I had, if I may interrupt you, is when you have showed us the first instance where you're switching back to run it in iteration-based mode and that class loading test there. Say right. I've triaged some system tests and I see that a 5-minute thing has failed, or I want to go and take one of those 5-minute jobs and run it in this fashion again. How does this test name, class loading test, relate to the test name, the 5-minute test name?
Yeah, so the way it will relate is, so let's say you have to first look for the 5-minute test name in the playlist. Mm-hmm. So for example, we look at the playlist and find out.
Mesbah, maybe we should just give an example.
Open a playlist. Yeah.
I was showing an Eclipse and I forgot that I didn't share Eclipse.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. We could even look at it in the browser by looking at the repo.
Right.
So basically, if we take a look at the repo here, sorry.
And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I think it's useful because when we look at what Gita will want to know.
Right.
So can you see?
Yes.
So this is what we're gonna see in the test outputs for system, or extended, whatever. But the class name is here.
Yeah, perfect. I felt that was the case, and I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, that's
in the recording.
That's a very good question. Because
very good.
That's what we're gonna need.
Yeah.
So the user can just copy it
directly out of the command.
Right. Maybe we can do another enhancement to remove the quote parameter. That was initially introduced because the windows are different, but that was on our plan to remove it. Like you can just directly use the quote, double quote there. Then the user can just directly just copy and paste. But for now, they have to change the quote parameter into a double quote. That's required by STF.
Yeah. That's.
I think we should update the grinder description to put an example there, just in case.
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah,
right.
That can be. We can also do that as part of the issue that we have for parameter separator, because I want to go and revisit each one of the descriptions of each parameter and make sure that they're still accurate. Yeah.
So Lam, I actually had a little bit of documentation in the PR with the hope that we're gonna be able to copy it and paste it to an appropriate place. So I know you spoke about 3 different places potentially where we should put them.
Right.
Yeah, I have that in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because for sure we'll want Doc to be able to point.
So yeah, to add to that, Shirley, you're like. I know we're adding the separator in a AutoGen job, but I'm thinking also to add the description in AutoGen job as well.
Yes.
That we don't have to
absolutely
do all those for every job.
It also will help in terms of for some of us who are working across multiple Jenkins servers to have the exact same experience at each server. It will make it a lot easier. And just in terms of onboarding new people to use grinders or to use test jobs, having that all common across everything will be much better. Yeah, but so, I mean, I'm not discouraging you from just going ahead and editing a one-off job here, but we certainly will want to make sure that we have an accurate description when we start to auto-gen everything. Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, so, and congratulations for it finding some bugs right off the bat. That this change has actually helped root out some issues.
I would have been concerned if it wasn't finding bugs.
Yeah, that's right. And the other upside of this, and I think where this will end up going, is like was internal, that in the external runs where we have limited machine resources, the 5-minute finds a lot of stuff. But if someone needs to add some soak tests that are running for 30 minutes, 2 hours or longer, there's certainly ways now this mechanism can be extended for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we do have plans. Like I remember mentioning that at one point we would want to pick some of the tests to run in maybe
a little longer. Yeah. We'll have to think about, I presume we would put that in the special level, because for our automated runs, we're already kind of bursting at the seams for in terms of time, machine resource availability and time. But it's great. Any other questions for Mesbah? Or
I've got a question. Mesbah, do you have a plan to update the makefile that comes with the OpenJDK system test repository to reflect the new targets? Because so that when I do local debugging, I tend to just run that makefile target and expect it to match what is being run in Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. That
would be nice if they lined up.
We could, but I was also looking at that make layer as a way to learn them in iterative based, So that was giving us an option to run this test in the original iteration based way locally. We can update that, but then I guess.
Well, in there you could just add extra targets, because there isn't the problem of it automatically generating things based on what's running, because the user decides what target they want to run. So you could have 2 targets, one without the 5 minutes and one with, and that would just work fine. You'd run whichever one you want.
Okay, I'll take that work item then.
May I ask why? Ideally, this should be able. You run this locally as well, right? Like if you want to run this locally, you just need to export the system custom target and then run it locally.
You can just build the JDK system test repository and type make and you target though as well, which means you don't need a lot of the other extras that.
So what you're saying is you don't want to use TKG and only use the system test material in that case, right?
Yeah, I've had some good feedback from the developers working on things who just run it like that. Anyway, that was one observation. Well, I've got one other observation, Mez, but one of the tests, the move single invocation, is called single invocation because it runs the test just once. So having applied 5 minutes, I'm not sure what it does, whether it still carries on looping round, but the point of it was to only run them once, so that if there is a really, really basic problem that it just doesn't work, that would catch it.
I'll have to take a closer look at the test, Simon. Thanks for the observation. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to take a look and find out exactly if it's actually changing the original purpose of the test.
Yeah. Other than that, more bugs. More bugs are good. Keeps the developers busy.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. Okay, Simon, I don't know if you noticed, if we're done with questions here, I'll move us along on the agenda. I had put you on the agenda just to mention some of the stuff that you had been finding and fixing. I didn't expect you to share a screen or anything, but I know you've also, we were going to take a closer look at some of the goodness that's happening in the system test side. So you and Mesbah were on deck today.
I'm going to have to remember.
I know, the march through. Well, I think the general statement is that you had been going through what was disabled and re-enabling things, checking what needed to be fixed and fixing them. That being the general target.
Yeah,
and you also had some work on understanding the math, the differences for math for hotspot and how that affected some test
I can
targets.
talk to this from it. So there are three main test areas, I guess, I've been looking at and sorting out. So one was the Lambda load test suite, which generate a load of lambdas and run them in a workload. But also, what might not be such common knowledge is the whole of the parallel streams implementation in Java also uses lambdas under the covers. Yes, so anyway, what we discovered, so there's been quite a few issues raised in various repositories over the last year or two about the Lambda tests failing in various ways. One is that it's been really good at finding GC bugs in the OpenJ9 implementation because it uses huge amounts of memory, the parallel streams implementation. I haven't tried to sort out why, but as one runs the test and it gets towards exhausting the Java heap, GC starts thrashing around trying to reclaim space, and that's thrown up quite a few problems where the JVM appears to hang, but it seems it's not actually hanging, it's just going really, really, really slowly. So the OpenJ9 GC team have been looking into that, but also there's been quite a few instances of out of memories. And the main culprits there were the large heap implementation in OpenJ9, which has 64-bit pointers instead of 32-bit pointers, so it just uses loads more heap. And that was causing out-of-memory errors once it had got over the bit where GC was thrashing around. And another problem is another test in there does a deep recursion using lambdas. So it does some kind of calculation, but then recurses on itself to a depth of about 2,000, I think. And that, it turns out, uses loads of native stack space. And again, depending on the implementation of the platform, in some cases it was running out of memory, native memory. And the worst offender there was the hotspot JDK8 implementation, because that's all interpreted. It's got no JIT, so it can't do anything clever with the stack. Anyway, armed with all of this investigation, what I ended up doing was splitting the test into two, so that the parallel streams test that is really heap hungry is just run on a workload on its own. And that is still causing J9 problems, because once I'd done that, the next day a new defect was raised at Eclipse on J9 saying they got a problem with GC, so that's good. And the remaining tests run of their own workload in a normal 5 minutes, as it is now, way. And I don't think that's thrown up any problems now, but at least it's now stable. Excellent. So that's that stuff. Then the maths I've been looking at, what we've again had over the last couple of years are some of the really old maths tests that we've got. Move was written in about 2006, I think. But some of those tests saying, hey, Java's giving me the wrong answer. So again, looking at those tests, what a lot of these maths tests do is just invent a load of mathematical operations, run those operations against a reference VM, record the result, hard code it in the test case, and then say that's what I expect the result to be. And what we were finding was that on some platforms and some releases, those did not match. However, again, after much investigation, it turns out that that is not a safe assumption, that you should always get the same result for the same math operation. The Java spec allows implementers to vary the precision of floating point a little bit if they feel they can get better performance by doing so. And in all the cases that we found, if the spec is interpreted like that, the tests are just testing things that aren't actually true. So really, all we've ended up there for one set of tests from the Move test suite is exclude those tests that were making the erroneous assumption. Another test that was in the system test repository that had followed the same philosophy, because we own the source, I was able to alter the test case so that it takes into account the precision variance that the Java spec allows. So when it gets a test result, it says, is it plus or minus this bit that I'm allowed? Right. And since then, we haven't had any more failures.
Nice.
So
And I guess the interesting part there was that the behavior between a hotspot was not quite as precise. And so that's where we were seeing these repeated failures.
I discovered something really interesting there, which was if you look at source.jar, then you go to the math.java source code, that is not what actually runs when you run the hotspot SDK. Because all that code does is call through to strict math. Strict math is a similar API where you must conform to the IEEE standard.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the code that was executing at all. So what they've got is what Hotspot calls an intrinsic, which it intrinsically knows that it doesn't use the Java API, it uses its own code. But that cost me quite a while. Thank you for Andrew Lender for sorting that out for me. The last big area I've looked at are the JLM tests, which stands for Java Lang Management. And what this API allows you to do is ask the JVM things about itself. So how many threads are you running? How much memory are you using? And so on. Mesba knows all about these. What we do in the tests is we have two JVMs. One is running one of our standard workloads that we use just in the workload testing. Then we start another Java up, and that uses the remote API for Java Lang Management to attach to that running Java and ask it what's going on. So this is the real use case. If you're running something like a web server and you are a cloud provider, then your cloud monitor could well all the web servers that started to find out how much memory they're using, and that's how they can scale and so on. So quite a good realistic test. The test had a few. The problem with trying to line it up is that one end of the test tries to predict how long events at the other end are going to take so that it can try and work out whether the other end is still running or whether it's gone away. And there were some timing issues there. Again, spent quite a number of days debugging what was going wrong, and I think ended up with one line of code change to make the server side of it run longer. But that flushed out, that got rid of a load of other intermittent issues.
Right.
And then finally, something I've just put in recently, if the server end does crash, then the exception that you get back at the client side that's attached to it tends to be a connect exception or an unmarshal exception. And the test was assuming that that meant the other end had gone away, but we've found cases where it doesn't mean it's gone away, it's just giving you a bad exception. So all I've done at the moment is change the code to actually dump the stack trace when it happens to give us some better diagnostics. When it happens next time, because again, it's quite intermittent, we can actually start to solve it more. So that's most of what I've been doing for the last few weeks.
Nice. And is this why you're volunteering to help with infrastructure issues now?
Well, no, not really. No,
I'm just kidding.
So now the tests are running clean pretty well, notwithstanding one or two machine issues. But there are some more that have been excluded over the last year or two that I'll start looking at adding back in if we can work out why they were excluded in the first place.
No, that's excellent. And I think having all of these additional tests re-included is obviously helping in fleshing out and finding more defects. So that's goal achieved. Really good. Okay. Questions at all around that? Or perhaps we can spend the next couple of minutes with Oscar to do a brief overview of some of the DeCapo performance stuff that he's been working on.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna to share my screen.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar, sorry, I forgot to mention I updated the server yesterday. So now I should run in the up-to-date code.
Yeah, I just checked the TRS external server. It works fine.
Right.
We add a new feature to monitor the DeCapo performance test, and it's located right under the dashboard tab, and if you click on the perf, so this is the graph that we just recently added to the TRSS server. We made the graph based on the dates the JDK version. So and then we have a filter to filter out if you wanted only the adopt OpenJDK pipeline or any other pipeline. So if we are testing, we are seeing the TRS in the internal server. So there are kind of internal Jenkins. So if we click on this filter, we're gonna show some data here. But right now we are just showing the adopt OpenJDK pipeline. And there's also OpenJDK 11 and OpenJDK 8. So different JDK version. And we can also change there's a zoom type and some other data. So the default one is the H2 data. So it gives you a more visual data to clearly show how the performance test going on for a period of time.
Yeah, thank you so much for getting this added. And I can see exactly now how we extend it to add for, because right now this is choosing OpenJ9, 8, and 11, but we can now extend for Hotspot and for other versions. And I think your recent stuff also includes, so if people see H2 and Eclipse and loose search there, those are tests in the DeCapo benchmark suite.
Yeah,
and
data is currently disabled, so we cannot see the data on the graph.
No, exactly. But that relates, the reason I bring it up is for people on the call, it relates directly to what's in the playlist. So you can go look for DeCapo inside of perf/DeCapo. There's a playlist in there and it shows all the different benchmarks that are, I think there's 8 or 9 in total for the DeCapo suite. Some run in the Sanity set and some run in the extended set. Right now you're monitoring, I think, Sanity, so you'll only see the ones that are tagged as at the Sanity level. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be adding the extended level later on.
Yeah, no, perfect. And then the same will go for, we have Renaissance. So in our perf portfolio, we have over 80 open performance benchmarks, the 8 or 9 from DeCapo, and there's quite a handful from Renaissance, and then a bunch of BumbleBench micro benchmarks as well. So slowly we're going to have a way to look at those benchmarks over time in this visual manner. And some of the perf-related stuff on the side of this TRSS service will come to life as we start gathering the history and the data on these benchmarks. So this forms part of our open performance testing story at AQAvit at Eclipse Foundation. But yeah, this is really great to see. Thank you so much, Oscar. Do people have questions for Oscar or Lan or anyone?
No, I'm good. It's actually great work. Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, really good. So I think we're at the end of our time, actually. If there's any other business that people want to cover today or suggestions for the upcoming in 2 weeks' time meeting, please let me know.
I would suggest maybe to get CanOSP student to demo next meeting.
Yes,
I think in the next meeting they should be the PR should be merged, and then we have really good the changes.
There's been great progress, hasn't there? Yeah. Okay, I'll throw that into the agenda and make sure the students are invited. They're in Western Canada and alternate time zones, so it may be a little early for them, but I'm sure that we can get some of them on the call to do a presentation. Yep, perfect. Anything else people wanted to talk about? If not, we'll call it a meeting. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for all the great updates. This is encouraging. Take care.
Thanks, Shani. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Shani. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.